How much would you guys pay for a really good language learning app? Hello YouTube, my name is Kyle, and today I wanted to talk to you guys about Duolingo. Duolingo, if you don't know, is one of the largest language apps in the world and currently has over 10 million people using the app every day for over a year long. It's the go-to language learning app, and it has been for the past couple of years. But recently, Duolingo has been hit with a lot of enshittification. A lot of the core features of the app are now hidden behind paywalls, and a lot of the freemium content that you would have gotten with the app is no longer available. Today, I wanted to talk to you guys about the history of Duolingo and its founder, CEO Luis van Ahn. And when researching this video, I found a rabbit hole after rabbit hole of the history of Duolingo and its CEO. And for that reason, I wanted to take you guys on this adventure with me as we explore where did we come from, how did we get here, and what does the future look like, as long as a lot of my own personal commentations. I have a very deep connection with Duolingo. I've been using the app for almost 9 years now, and I feel like a lot of what's went wrong with the app recently has just been because of AI. AI has brought a lot of slop to the courses, as well as adding half-baked features to the app that don't really make sense of its original core mission, which is supposed to be free language learning for everyone forever. And it's become such a far cry of what that used to be. So I wanted to take you guys on this adventure with me as we explore what happened and where we are now. But before we get into the video, I wanted to say thank you guys for being here. I hope you enjoy this content, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, let's get into the video. CEO Luis was born in Guatemala City on August 19th, 1978. Luis initially became fascinated with computers at a young age, at the age of 8, when his mother bought him a Commodore 64 computer. He loved computers so much that while in high school, while he's working at his aunt's marshmallow factory, and his coworkers were taking breaks and stuff like that, he would be busy networking all the computers at the factory just to do it. Later in life, when Luis wanted to apply to colleges, he actually had to spend $1,200 to fly to El Salvador to take the TOEFL. Now, if you're like me and you don't know what that is, the TOEFL is the Test of English as a Foreign Language test. It's a standardized test meant to measure the ability of non-native English speakers wishing to enroll in English-speaking universities. It was that $1,200 that he had to spend that really set wrongly with Luis, and he believed that there was much improvement that could be brought upon this standardized language test, and where he doesn't have to fly to another country in order to get certified for English. Luis would later be accepted into Duke University, choosing to opt for a degree in mathematics and graduating in the year 2000. He then went on to earn his PhD at Carnegie Mellon in 2005. Needless to say, the guy was really smart. But back in the year 2000, Luis had actually begun work on a very innovative technology known as the CAPTCHA system. CAPTCHAs were an early form of preventing spam on websites and were mainly used to prevent bots from clicking on things and adding up ad revenue, things like that. It was this technology that really threw Luis into the limelight, with this CAPTCHA system eventually becoming his second company, reCAPTCHA, which would actually get sold later to Google. And it was actually picked up by news articles like the New York Times and USA Today for its innovative way of preventing bots from signing up on websites. He actually became so popular from this CAPTCHA technology, which relied on everyday people responding to the system, that he became known as the father of crowdsourcing. Remember this again for later. Now, in 2009, van Ahn had sold this second company, reCAPTCHA, built off this system. And riding on the success of this, along with postgraduate student Severin Hacker, the two wanted to create an education app. Van Ahn noted his difficulties when taking the Guatemalan exam and wanted to use this app as a way to overcome those barriers that he experienced earlier in his life. Now, Hacker was actually motivated for the same reasons, and he stated that, quote, "Free education will really change the world. If we achieve that, then all the other issues, I don't know, they don't seem to matter to me." Now, the founders initially considered making Duolingo a non-profit organization, but Luis believed that this model wasn't sustainable. He told news articles at that time that, quote, "You have to somehow convince billionaires to keep funding you forever." And I think he found out how. So let's get into the history of Duolingo. Now, Duolingo received its first round of investments in October of 2011, raising over $3.3 million from both private capitalists and venture funds. Now, because this video is about AI, I think it's important to make a distinction about what AI is being used in this context. When I'm talking about AI, I'm generally talking about large language models, and that's generally something like ChatGPT or Google's Gemini. Now, Duolingo at this time would use an algorithm to have the characters use text-to-speech to convert text material into their voice. Now, this would actually speed up development by a lot, so the developers could actually focus on the actual content of material and grammatical positioning of the words versus the actual voices of the characters. Now, Duolingo officially launched on June 19th, 2012, with a waitlist of about 500,000 users. It operated on a freemium business model in which users had access to all the content of the app as long as they could see ads play at the end of each of their lessons. Now, you could also pay for the Pro subscription in which those ads would be removed. Now, at this time, the content was only available on the web and it didn't have enough app available to it on any Play Store. But that would change later in that year in November when it was officially released for iPhone, and then in the next year in May in 2013, it was released for Android. Now, by July of that year, the app had become so popular on the Google Play Store that it had shot to the top of the charts, becoming the #1 free education app available in the world. And later that same year, Apple had given it the App of the Year award, one of the most prestigious awards that any app could ever get. And so on October 13th, 2013, Duolingo had officially launched its crowdsourced incubator program. This crowdsourced program will rely on volunteer contributions to add more content to each user's native language. Now, the content at this time for each course was structured in a tree-like format, in which users could pick which specific lessons they would like to take before advancing on to the next unit. It was because of this innovative design and its short, bite-sized lessons that really shot Duolingo to the top. So by December of 2019, the company had seen such explosive growth that the company was now valued at $1.5 billion. It was also reported around this time that Duolingo had 30 million active users at the time and began opening offices in Beijing, New York, and Seattle. With such great success, it's kind of confusing on how all this becomes derailed, and it's at this point where the controversies really begin. So, beginning in March of 2022, the app began to experience a lot of changes. Firstly, they discontinued their forums, in which users could go online and ask questions specific to each of their courses and receive a lot of feedback from other users and even content creators that were affiliated with Duolingo. These discussions became read-only and then eventually would get removed completely, so no one could access this content that was once freely available. It was personally a really good experience being able to view these forums because it really expanded upon the grammatical structures of these languages that were otherwise missed when learning through the app. Later that year, in August of 2022, Duolingo announced that it was actually changing how the courses would be structured. Moving away from its unique tree-like structure, it became a very bland, linear structure where each lesson has to be completed about 6 times before you can move on to the next lesson. And then you would run into maybe an audio lesson, or maybe you would run into a practice section. Now, these already existed in the tree structure, but now you had less variability. You had less freedom on being able to pick which lessons you would like to complete. Now, at the end of each block of lessons in the tree-like structure, you would have to complete all the lessons. But it lost a lot of its personality switching from a tree structure to a linear one. This garnered a lot of pushback from the community, so much so that the CEO, Luis, had to come out and say that there were no plans on changing it back to its linear structure. Now, in later investment calls, Luis would actually say this change was because he wanted to add a lot more content to the app, but was unable to do so because of how large the app had become. Because of its tree-like structure, he argued that it would take a lot longer to keep adding more content. Changing it to this linear structure would allow them to continuously add more content and focus on the users. Now, onto the hack. In January of 2023, over 2.6 million users' name, email, phone number, Google ID, Facebook IDs, and so on was sold to the internet at a starting bid of $1,500. Now, in an odd twist, Duolingo said that this is actually not necessarily a hack because the way the hackers obtained this information was through an API. Now, an API is a way for computers to talk to each other in a structured format. An API is used so one app, Duolingo, could send its information to other apps so that other apps could get information about it. If Facebook wanted to know how many users Duolingo currently had and put it on a public forum, they could just contact Duolingo through this API and get that information. So when users' name, email, and phone numbers were all exposed in this leak, a spokesperson just said that this was intentional and was not actually a part of a generic hack. So while the initial bid started at $1,500, you too can access all this information of over 2.6 million users for now $2.13. Now later in that year, in October of 2023, Duolingo would begin a new approach in adding different kind of style of features, starting with their math language section and then their music section. Now, the math section that they added is very bare bones. It's something that generally is tailored towards, I would believe, elementary school students, as well as for their music language section. But these sections that were added don't really make sense in terms of a language learning app. I mean, Duolingo already has a separate app for teaching young kids very low-level grammatical things in English and other languages. They should have created a different app dedicated to math and should have created a different app dedicated to music rather than bundling it all together and into this hodgepodge. As of the writing of this video, they've actually added another section for learning chess. Now, I'm not necessarily against these changes, it just doesn't make sense. We experienced over 10 years of really good growth. It was very strong, and the app went from being worth almost $10 million when it first started to now $1.5 billion, and is now just throwing anything it can against the wall to try and see what sticks. Now, in January of the next year, 2024, Duolingo would begin firing some of its contractors, about 10%, and would begin replacing them with artificial intelligence. Now, Duolingo will usually bring on a lot of contractors to fill in things like the graphics, the images, and the animations. I think it's due in no small part that due to the advancement in AI when it comes to image generation, Duolingo sees this as a major opportunity to replace a lot of the personalized graphics that made the app unique. Duolingo said, quote, AI will increasingly be used to perform tasks such as creating sentences for courses, producing lists of acceptable translations, and reviewing user errors. Now, whether Duolingo will keep it that way and use AI just for that reason is yet to be seen. Personally, I don't think it's going to stay that way. I think with how the CEO has recently acted in press releases, I think he believes that the AI will play a much larger role in the app than it currently does. And that's generally where we're at with the app. I think a lot has changed over the last couple of years, and specifically the last 3, and it really worries me about where the app is headed. For something that was so game-changing, it's becoming something that's fallen on its face just so it can pursue some last-minute dollars. Now, in this video, I didn't even get to talk about the marketing strategies that Duolingo will use heavily to try and keep its users engaged on and off the platform. It's even collaborated with Netflix to produce a Squid Games collaboration and is doing something big every 2 months. But needless to say, I think the app is not headed in a good direction, and it makes me sad because I really did like this app. I have over a 1.5 year streak on the app, which is not even that large compared to some of the users that I have seen on the app, but I am seeing a lot of users leave the app en masse, and I really do think it's because of how the CEO has approached AI in the company. I do think change can still come to the app, and for the better, but it really needs a wake-up call. On Wall Street, it's become clear that this is exactly what it wants to see. It wants more of the content on Duolingo to be AI replaced. Anything that can be made for cheaper, for a lot more people, will obviously take precedence when it comes to the financial world. But at the same time, we're losing everything that made the app special. Anyway, that's a video. I want to thank y'all again for watching this video and supporting me. Make sure to like and subscribe and all that good stuff. It's completely up to you, but it would really mean a lot. Thank you. Ciao and auf Wiedersehen.